There is a feeling you have had your entire life. It doesn't have a name exactly. It arrives at strange moments, in the middle of a conversation that should feel meaningful, at the peak of something you worked years to achieve, in the quiet after a celebration when everyone else still seems satisfied. It's the feeling that something is missing, not something specific, not a person or a place or an object you could go and retrieve. Something more fundamental than that, something you couldn't point to even if someone asked you to try. You've probably explained it away 100 times, told yourself you were tired or ungrateful or still looking for the right relationship, the right career, the right version of your life. And maybe those explanations held for a while. But the feeling came back. It always comes back. What if that feeling isn't a malfunction? What if it's the most honest thing about you? 2,500 years ago, a philosopher in Athens felt it too. His name was Plato, and he didn't try to silence the feeling. He followed it, all the way down to the roots of reality itself. What he found there became one of the most consequential ideas in the history of human thought. He called them the forms. And if you understand what he meant, really understand it, not just as an abstract philosophical concept, but as something that applies to the specific texture of your daily life, you will understand why you feel the way you feel, why satisfaction keeps slipping through your fingers, why beauty moves you in ways you can't explain, why you recognize truth when you encounter it, even before you can argue for it. The feeling of something missing isn't a problem to solve. It's a signal. Start with something simple. Think about a circle. Not a specific circle. Not the one you drew in school. Not the rim of a coffee cup. Not the shape of a coin. The idea of a circle. The concept itself. A perfectly closed curve where every point is exactly equidistant from the center. Now here's the question Plato asked. Have you ever actually seen one? Not drawn one, or approximated one, or found something that looked like one from a distance? Have you ever encountered a perfect circle? In the physical world with your physical eyes? You haven't. No one has. Every circle that has ever existed in the material world is imperfect. The atoms are slightly misaligned. The curve wobbles at scales too small for the eye to catch. Even the most precise instruments humans have ever built cannot produce a geometrically perfect circle. And yet, you know exactly what a perfect circle is. You can think about it clearly, define it precisely, recognize when something is closer to or further from being a circle. You hold the concept with complete confidence, even though you have never once encountered the thing itself. Where does that knowledge come from? Plato's answer was radical. You know what a perfect circle is because the perfect circle exists. Just not here, not in the physical world of matter and time, in a different dimension of reality altogether, a realm beyond space, beyond decay, beyond change, a realm where perfect forms exist as the eternal blueprints for everything that appears in this world. He called that realm the world of forms. And the circle you've been thinking about your whole life? It lives there. This isn't just about geometry. Plato applied the same logic to everything. There is a form of justice, perfect, eternal, unchanging, of which every law, every court ruling, every act of fairness in human history is an imperfect imitation. Some come closer than others. None arrive. There is a form of beauty, absolute, timeless, of which every sunset, every face, every piece of music that has ever moved you is a partial reflection. You feel the pull of that form when beauty strikes you. The longing it creates isn't for the beautiful thing. It's for the source behind it. There is a form of the good, the highest form of all, from which everything else derives its reality and meaning. The way the sun makes both sight and life possible in the physical world, the form of the good makes knowledge and existence possible in the intelligible world. Everything you have ever valued, loved, or reached toward, every moment of genuine meaning in your life, was a brush with a form. And every time the feeling faded, every time satisfaction slipped away, every time something that should have been enough wasn't, That was the form reminding you. The copy is not the original. Now sit with that for a moment, because this is where Plato's philosophy stops being abstract and starts being uncomfortably personal. Think about the last time you achieved something significant. You worked toward it, anticipated it, imagined how it would feel. And when it arrived, there was a moment, maybe a brief one, where it felt real and complete. And then, almost immediately, something shifted. The achievement was still there, but the feeling had changed. It was less than you'd imagined, or it was exactly what you'd imagined, but somehow still not enough. You didn't fail to appreciate it. You were sensing the gap between the copy and the form. Every achievement in the physical world is an imitation of something your soul already knows. The satisfaction you imagined, that perfect feeling of completion. That's the form of fulfillment, the form of success, the form of meaning. And every real-world version of those things is an approximation, close, perhaps, but not the original. The feeling of something missing is not ingratitude, it's accuracy. Plato believed that before you were born, your soul existed in the realm of forms directly, not as a vague spiritual concept. He meant it with philosophical precision. Before this body, before this life, before memory as you experience it now, your soul moved through an existence where the forms were not distant blueprints but immediate reality. You didn't reach toward truth. You were in its presence. Beauty wasn't something you sought. It surrounded you completely. And then you were born. And birth, in Plato's vision, is the act of forgetting. The soul descends into a body, into time, into the shifting, unstable world of matter and sensation. And the clear vision it once had of the forms grows dim, not lost, never entirely lost, but covered over by the noise of physical existence. He called this process lethe, forgetting, and the soul's journey in life is the slow recovery of what it once knew. He called that recovery anamnesis, recollection. Learning isn't the acquisition of new information. It's the gradual remembering of truths the soul already holds. Every genuine insight you've ever had, every moment where something clicked, where a truth felt not new, but recognized. That was anamnesis. Your soul remembering something it saw before the forgetting. Think about that word. Recognized. Recognized. To know again. To know something for the second time. Why does truth feel familiar when you encounter it for the first time? There is a dialogue Plato wrote called the Meno. In it, Socrates encounters an uneducated slave boy who has never studied mathematics. Through a series of careful questions, without telling the boy anything, only asking, Socrates leads him to independently discover a complex geometric truth. The boy knew it, not because someone taught him, but because the knowledge was already there, waiting to be uncovered. Socrates called himself a midwife, not planting knowledge, but helping birth what was already latent. Plato's point wasn't just pedagogical, it was metaphysical. The reason you can be led to a truth you've never been told is that you already know it at a level deeper than conscious memory. The soul carries its entire encounter with the forms, like an archive in a language you have forgotten. Education, real education, is the process of translation. And this means something uncomfortable about modern life. We live in a world saturated with information, more data, more content, more stimulation than any human civilization in history. And yet the feeling of something missing is perhaps more widespread now than it has ever been. Because information is not recollection. You can fill your mind with facts and still feel completely empty. Because emptiness isn't a deficit of information. It's a disconnection from the forms. The thing you're missing isn't more content. It's contact with what's real. Plato's most famous image is the cave. You've probably encountered it before. But strip away everything you think you know about it and feel it freshly. Imagine you have been in a dark cave since the moment you were born. You are chained so that you can only look at one wall. Behind you, a fire burns. Between the fire and you, other people move, carrying objects, casting shadows on the wall you face. Those shadows are all you have ever seen. You have given them names. You have developed theories about their behavior. You have built an entire understanding of the world based on their movements. And you are not stupid. You are observant, thoughtful, sophisticated in your analysis of the shadows. But you have never once seen the objects casting them. Now imagine someone unchains you. You turn around. The firelight blinds you. It's violent after a lifetime of dim shadow watching. You don't want to see it. Your eyes burn. You want to turn back to the comfortable darkness of the wall. But you don't. You stumble toward the mouth of the cave. Sunlight hits you like a physical force. You are overwhelmed, disoriented, unable to see anything at first. This is worse than the fire. This is unbearable. And slowly, very slowly, a world comes into focus. Grass, trees, water, the sky, objects with color and depth and substance you never imagined from their shadows. And finally, the sun itself, the source of all light, the reason any of this is visible at all. That sun is the form of the good. And the moment of blinding clarity, when your eyes finally adjust, that is philosophy. Here is what Plato wants you to notice about yourself. You are in the cave right now, not as an insult, not as a suggestion that you are naive or deceived, but as a structural description of what it means to be a human being living in a physical world, perceiving reality through senses that can only report surfaces. The shadows on your wall are the career that was supposed to make you feel complete, the relationship that was supposed to be enough, the achievement that was supposed to silence the voice that says more, not yet, not quite. The version of yourself you are working toward, convinced that when you arrive, the feeling will stop. These things are not worthless. The shadows are real shadows. They are cast by real objects. The world of appearances participates in the world of forms. But confusing the shadow for the source is what creates the ache. You keep rearranging the shadows on the wall, looking for the configuration that will finally satisfy. But satisfaction isn't in the arrangement. It's in turning around. The prisoner who escapes doesn't stop there. This is the part of the allegory that most retellings omit. After the escaped prisoner has seen sunlight, after his eyes have adjusted, after he has walked in the world of real objects and real light, he goes back. He descends into the cave voluntarily. He returns to the people still chained to the wall, still watching shadows, still debating the names and patterns of flickering images. He wants to tell them what he has seen. He wants to show them the way out. And they don't believe him. His eyes, adjusted to sunlight, can't see the shadows as clearly as they can. He stumbles. He seems confused. To the prisoners, this looks like damage, like the outside broke him, like he has lost his sharpness, his usefulness, his ability to engage with what matters. They decide the journey is dangerous. They decide it's better to stay. Plato wrote this as a warning about philosophy, about what happens to anyone who returns from an encounter with truth and tries to share it with people who haven't made the journey. But he also wrote it as a description of something that happens inside every individual mind. Part of you has glimpsed the sunlight, and part of you keeps arguing that it's safer in the dark. That voice that says, be practical, be realistic, stop chasing things you can't hold. Settle. The shadows are enough. That's the prisoner who hasn't turned around. That's the part of you that would rather debate the shadows than face the disorientation of seeing what's actually casting them. The feeling of something missing is the part of you that has already turned. Let's talk about beauty. Not beauty as aesthetics. Not what looks good or what the culture approves. Beauty as an experience. That specific sensation when something strikes you and the response in your chest is almost indistinguishable from grief. You know what I mean. A piece of music that makes you feel something you can't name. A landscape that stops you. A sentence that seems to know something about you that you've never told anyone. A face in a specific quality of light at a specific moment that seems to be more than a face. Where does that feeling come from? Plato addressed this directly in a dialogue called The Symposium, and his answer is one of the most astonishing things in the history of philosophy. He said, "You are not responding to the beautiful thing. You are responding to what the beautiful thing is pointing toward. When beauty strikes you, when it takes your breath away, when it produces that ache, your soul is recognizing the form of beauty behind the appearance, the face, the music, the landscape. These are transparent in that moment. You see through them to something absolute, something your soul knew before it forgot. That's why beautiful things make you ache rather than simply please you. Pleasure is satisfied by possession. You get the thing, you enjoy it, you're satisfied. But you cannot possess the form of beauty. You can only be briefly in its presence, through the things that reflect it. So beauty creates longing rather than fulfillment. It points beyond itself and says, the source of what you're feeling is not here, but you are getting warmer. And Plato described a ladder. You begin by being captivated by one beautiful thing, a person perhaps. You are consumed by it, but wisdom, slowly, begins to notice that other things are also beautiful, and you realize the beauty was never entirely in the one thing. It was a quality that appeared through it. Then you begin to see beauty in ideas, in mathematics, in the structure of an argument, in the invisible pattern behind things rather than the visible surface of them. And at the summit of the ladder, Plato said, the soul glimpses beauty itself. Not a beautiful thing, beauty, the form, the source. And in that glimpse, the longing resolves, not because it's satisfied, but because the soul recognizes where it came from. The ache was the journey. The form was always the destination. This is why love is so painful. Not romantic love only, though that's the most visceral example. Any love. The love of a friend, a parent, a child, a place, a time in your life you can never return to. We love things that change, things that age, leave, end. And the more beautiful they are, the more they hurt, because the more clearly they reflect a form, the more acutely we feel the gap between the reflection and the source. You fall in love with someone. You see in them, briefly in certain moments, something that seems absolute, something that feels like it was always true, like you are not experiencing something new but recovering something lost. And then time moves, not because the person fails you necessarily, but because the form of love cannot be fully housed in any particular person. The individual is the vessel. The form is what fills it. And no vessel holds everything. Plato didn't say this to be cruel. He said it to be honest about what love actually is, and where it's trying to take you. Love, rightly understood, is not a destination. It's a direction. Let's go somewhere that might surprise you. Modern physics. In 1905, Einstein published a paper containing what would become the most famous equation in history, E equals mc squared. That equation does not describe a single event. It does not describe one explosion, or one atom, or one star. It describes a relationship, pure, abstract, universal, a truth that holds across every instance of matter and energy in the entire cosmos. Before Einstein wrote it, the equation was already true. After the last star in the universe burns out, the equation will still be true. It exists the way Plato said the forms exist, independently of any particular instance, outside of time, available to any mind that reasons its way toward it. Where does it live? It's not in the ink on a page. It's not in Einstein's brain, which is gone now. It's not in the textbook you might have encountered it in. It exists the way a form exists. Immaterially, necessarily, eternally. Every time a physicist searches for the unified theory of everything, the one equation that underlies all forces, all particles, all phenomena, they are doing exactly what Plato described as the philosophical ascent, moving from appearances to structure, from instances to form. The language has changed, the instruments have changed, but the search is the same. And the feeling that drives it, that conviction that beneath the chaotic surface of experience, there is a hidden order waiting to be found, that's not a scientific hypothesis. That's anamnesis, the soul remembering that it has seen the pattern before. Here is the hardest part of Plato's vision. The forms cannot be found in the external world, not with better technology, not with more data, not with a more sophisticated model of the brain or the universe. The forms are not objects to be discovered by instruments. They are conditions for the possibility of any discovery at all. You cannot see them. You can only align with them. And alignment is an inward movement. Plato described the highest form of philosophical activity as nous, a Greek word usually translated as intellect or reason, but meaning something more specific, the direct perception of truth, not reasoning toward it, not constructing arguments that point to it, but the moment when the mind suddenly sees what it has been reasoning toward. You have experienced this, the moment when you weren't thinking about a problem and the answer arrived complete, the moment when a truth you'd been circling for years suddenly became obvious, the moment when something that should have taken explanation just revealed itself. That's nous. That's the inner eye opening. Plato said that the goal of philosophy, the goal of a well-lived human life, is to cultivate the conditions for that kind of seeing, to make the mind quiet enough, clear enough, ordered enough that the forms can be perceived through it. And he was ruthlessly honest about what blocks that, not ignorance, desire, not lack of information, attachment, the passions that pull the soul downward, greed, fear, anger, the desperate need for approval, the hunger for pleasure that promises to fill the emptiness and never does. These don't block the forms the way a wall blocks light. They distort the lens through which the forms are seen. A mind seized by craving cannot perceive truth, not because truth is absent, because the mind is too turbulent to hold its image. Plato described the soul as a charioteer driving two horses. One horse is noble. It reaches upward, toward truth, toward the beautiful, toward the forms. It doesn't need to be driven so much as aimed. Given the right direction, it runs. The other horse is unruly. It pulls downward, toward appetite, toward sensation, toward the immediate and the tangible. It wants what it wants now, regardless of where it leads. The charioteer is reason. And the whole art of being human, the whole project of philosophy and ethics and self-cultivation, is the charioteer learning to manage those two horses, not destroying the unruly one, not pretending it doesn't exist, but training it, ordering it, directing its energy towards something that doesn't destroy the journey. When reason rules wisely, the soul ascends. When appetite wins, the soul falls back into the cave. And you know which is which in your own life. You've felt both. The pull toward what you know doesn't serve you. The distraction, the numbing, the choosing of comfort over clarity. That's the unruly horse. And the other pull, the one toward something you can't fully name, something that feels more real than the things you can point to. That's the noble horse. The feeling of something missing is the noble horse, straining forward. Let's talk about what Plato called the divided line. Imagine a line divided into 4 sections. At the bottom, images and reflections, shadows of things, the least real level of experience, not false, but farthest from truth. This is the level at which most content operates, the level of entertainment that stimulates without illuminating, the level of appearances that flatter without revealing. Above it, belief about physical things, the ordinary world of objects, people, events, the world you navigate every day, more real than images, but still not the deepest level, still the cave. Above that, mathematical and abstract reasoning, the level at which you begin to encounter necessity, truths that couldn't be otherwise. When you follow a logical argument and feel the conclusion lock into place, you're here. This is closer. At the top, direct intellectual vision of the forms themselves. No. The level at which the mind is not reasoning about truth, but in contact with it. Most of life is lived at the bottom 2 levels. Most of what culture offers you is designed for the bottom 2 levels. And the feeling of something missing is the soul's protest against living entirely there. You were built for the top of the line. The hunger you feel is architectural. It's built into the structure of your soul, which once knew what the top of the line felt like and cannot fully forget. This is why philosophy is not a luxury, not a hobby for people who have time to think, not a discipline reserved for academics, not an optional enhancement to a life that's already working. For Plato, philosophy was the fundamental human activity, the one thing that addresses the actual problem rather than its symptoms. Every other strategy for relieving the feeling of something missing addresses it at the level of shadows. More achievement, more pleasure, more connection, more stimulation. These aren't wrong exactly, but they're rearranging the wall. They're finding better shadows. Philosophy, in Plato's sense, is the turning of the soul, not toward new information, toward a different kind of seeing. And that turning is available to you right now. Not at the end of a degree program or after years of study. In this moment, if you choose it. The question is whether you're willing to face the disorientation of seeing more clearly. Because Plato was honest about this too. The ascent is not comfortable. When the prisoner turns toward the fire, his eyes burn. When he emerges into sunlight, he is temporarily blind. The truth is not immediately pleasant. But the blindness passes, and what you see afterward makes the shadows look like what they always were. There is a word Plato used that doesn't translate well into English. Kalos kagathos. It means, roughly, beautiful and good, but not as separate qualities, as a single unified state. The idea that genuine goodness is inherently beautiful and genuine beauty is inherently good. That at the level of the forms, these two things are one. He believed that when a soul aligns with the forms, when it perceives truth clearly and acts from that perception, it becomes kalos kagathos, beautiful in the deepest sense. Not physically necessarily, but in the way a life can be beautiful, in the way an act can be beautiful, in the way a person who is genuinely trying to live truthfully is beautiful in a manner that has nothing to do with appearance. And here is what this means for the feeling of something missing. The thing you are missing is not an object. It is not a relationship or a status or a version of your life. It is an orientation, a way of being in relation to what is real, a quality of attention that sees through appearances rather than being captured by them. The forms are not distant. They are not in another dimension you need special access to reach. They are the structure of every moment you are already in. The form of beauty is present in the conversation you are half paying attention to. The form of justice is present in every small choice you make about how to treat someone. The form of the good is present as the standard against which you already measure everything, even when you can't name what you're measuring against. You are surrounded by the forms the way a fish is surrounded by water. The problem is not proximity. The problem is attention. Plato's teacher was Socrates, and Socrates spent his entire life doing one thing, asking questions, not answering them, asking them. He walked through Athens disrupting people's confidence in their own knowledge. He found people who were certain they understood justice, or courage, or piety, and asked them to define it. And every definition fell apart under examination. Not because the people were stupid, but because they were confusing the shadows for the forms. They knew what just acts looked like. They had never examined the form of justice itself. And Socrates believed that this examination, this willingness to question your own certainty, to hold your assumptions up to the light and see which ones survive, this was the most important thing a human being could do. He called it caring for the soul, and he was executed for it. The Athenians found his questioning destabilizing, corrosive to the comfortable certainties that held society together. They accused him of corrupting the youth, and what they meant really was that he was teaching people to turn away from the wall. They preferred the shadows. The pattern has not changed. Every culture generates pressures, social, economic, psychological, to stay in the cave, to accept the official version of what matters, what success looks like, what a life is for. The person who asks too deeply, who questions too honestly, who follows the argument wherever it leads, that person makes the unchained prisoners uncomfortable. Socrates accepted death rather than stop asking. Plato wrote the account of his trial and death, and in doing so, he showed us something about what the philosophical life actually costs and what it's worth. What would it look like to live differently? Not to abandon the world, not to renounce pleasure or beauty or human connection, but to hold them differently, to engage with appearances while remaining oriented toward what they are appearances of. Plato called this theoria contemplation, not passive withdrawal, active seeing, the practice of perceiving the form through the instance rather than being absorbed entirely in the instance. You taste the fruit, and behind the sweetness, you sense the form of sweetness, the abstract quality that makes sweetness possible and recognizable. You feel affection for someone, and through it, you sense the form of love, the archetypal pattern of which this affection is one expression. You encounter a moment of genuine fairness, and through it, you touch the form of justice, permanent and real beyond any particular just act. This is not mysticism. It is a trained mode of attention, and it changes everything about how life feels. Because when you learn to see through appearances rather than being captured by them, the ache doesn't disappear, but it transforms. It stops being the ache of hunger and becomes the ache of recognition. The difference between emptiness and longing, between absence and direction. You are no longer missing something. You are moving toward it. The soul that has seen the forms, Plato said, is never fully at home in the cave again. This sounds like a curse. It isn't. It means that once you've genuinely glimpsed what's real, once you've had even a brief encounter with truth as it actually is, beyond the shadows, the ordinary consolations lose their power to deceive you. They still have value. The world is still beautiful. People are still worth loving. Achievements are still worth pursuing. But you hold them differently. You don't ask them to be what they cannot be. You don't demand that the reflection be the source. And in releasing that demand, something unexpected happens. The things of this world become more beautiful, not less, because you stop being frustrated by their incompleteness. You accept them as what they are. Windows rather than walls, vessels rather than sources. Temporary expressions of permanent forms. The flower is more beautiful when you know it will fade. The moment is more precious when you hold it as a gift rather than a possession. The person you love becomes more lovable when you love the form of love through them, rather than demanding they contain all of it. The feeling of something missing doesn't go away when you understand Plato. Let me be honest about that. The longing is structural. It's built into what you are. A soul that once knew the forms and is living at a distance from them. Philosophy doesn't fill that gap. It orients you toward it. But there is a difference between the ache of being lost and the ache of being on your way home. The first is disorienting, directionless, inexplicable. You feel it, but you don't know what it means. You try to silence it with things that don't address it, and when they fail, you feel worse. Not just empty, but somehow ashamed of the emptiness. The second is purposeful. You feel it, and you know what it's pointing toward. You stop fighting it. You stop trying to fill it with shadows. You let it guide you. That shift from lost to oriented is what Plato was offering. Not an answer to the feeling, a way of following it. Close your eyes for a moment, not for long, just a breath. Notice what's happening in your awareness right now. Thoughts are moving. Sensations are arriving and dissolving. Sounds are occurring and passing. But what is noticing all of this? There is something in you that observes the movement without moving. Something that is present to every changing experience without itself changing. Something that was here at the beginning of this video and will be here after it ends. Something that was there in childhood and is here now and will be there in whatever years you have remaining. What is that? Plato would say, that's the soul. That's the part of you that belongs to the world of forms. The part that is not subject to time and decay. The part that was there before the forgetting and has been trying to remember ever since. You cannot see it. You cannot point to it. but you cannot deny it either. It is the most certain thing about you. The feeling of something missing is not your enemy. It is the most important information you have. It is the soul reporting accurately on its situation, immersed in a world of appearances, longing for the forms it once knew, refusing to accept that the shadows are the whole story. Every time you've tried to silence it with something that didn't work, every distraction, every achievement, every relationship you hoped would finally be enough, the feeling came back. Not because you failed, because you were listening to the wrong answer. The right answer is not out there. It never was. The forms are not waiting in a future version of your life. They are present now, in the structure of this moment, invisible but indispensable. The form of truth is present in your capacity to recognize it. The form of beauty is present in whatever moved you today. The form of the good is present as the standard you already apply, unconsciously, to every choice you make. You are not separated from the realm of forms by distance. You are separated from it by attention. Philosophy, at its deepest, is not an academic discipline. It is what Plato called periagoge, a turning of the whole soul, not adding new beliefs on top of old ones, not accumulating better opinions, a fundamental reorientation of what you take to be real, what you value, what you reach toward. That turning is available in any moment. It is happening in some small way right now. In the fact that you are here, attending to these questions, letting them work on you rather than dismissing them. The cave is not a prison you can escape once and leave behind. It is the ongoing condition of being a human being in a physical world. You will return to the shadows. You will forget the sunlight. That's not failure. That's the rhythm of a life. The question is not whether you will descend into the cave. The question is whether you will keep turning toward the exit. Plato ends many of his dialogues not with conclusions, but with questions that linger. He understood that philosophy is not a destination you arrive at. It is a practice you maintain, a direction you keep choosing, a way of holding your attention that refuses to be entirely satisfied by surfaces. The feeling of something missing, understood rightly, is that practice calling to you. It is the soul's hunger for its origin. It is the noble horse straining forward. It is the part of you that has already turned away from the wall and cannot fully turn back. Follow it, not because it leads somewhere comfortable, because it leads somewhere real. And you have always known, underneath everything, beneath all the strategies and distractions and explanations, that real is what you were after. The realm of forms is not beyond the stars. It is the luminous silence behind every thought. And it has been waiting all this time for the attention you are finally learning to give it.